Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those three countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen, Mr. Hegseth, we ask our troops to go into harm's way all the time. We ask them to go into harm's way. And this behind me is a copy of the Soldier's Creed, a copy that usually hangs over my desk here in the Senate, and you should be familiar with it. It's the same copy that hung over my desk at Walter Reed every single day that I woke up and fought my way back because I wanted to go back and serve next to my buddies who'd saved my life. This same copy, these words are repeated over and over and over again. And let me read out two things to you, two sentences. I will always place the mission first, and I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior task. Mr. Hegseth, our troops follow these words every single day, and they man up and they pack their rucksacks and they go to war. And they deserve a leader who can lead them, not a leader who wants to lower the standards for himself or raising the standards.
Notice what's happening here, because none of it is accidental. The room looks chaotic, it sounds contentious, but every single move is calculated, step by step, methodical. Step 1. Set the terms. Before a single substantive question is asked, Tammy Duckworth establishes the only lens that matters. This is not a debate about policy preferences. This is not a conversation about ideology, it is one question repeated in different forms. Are you capable of doing this job? Once that frame is locked in, every stumble that follows isn't just an awkward moment, it's evidence. Step 2. Let the numbers speak. She doesn't come in swinging. She comes in with data, an organization of 200 people. A budget so badly managed that specialists had to be brought in after the fact just to figure out what happened. Then she puts two figures side by side. $16 million.
Mr. Hegseth, this hearing is about whether you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense, and one of the qualifications, to answer my colleague's question, is to actually win the votes of every member of this committee and to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And you need to convince us that you're worthy of that vote, because the people of the state of Illinois voted for me to be their senator so that I could cast that vote when it comes to picking who is going to be the next Secretary of Defense. This hearing now seems to be a hearing about whether or not women are qualified to serve in combat, and not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And let me just say that the American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person. Our adversaries watch closely during times of transition, and any sense that the Department of Defense that keeps us safe is being steered by someone who's wholly unprepared for the job puts America at risk, and I am not willing to do that. With that in mind, Mr. Hegseth, I want you to try to explain to the American people, this committee, who have to vote for you, and to our troops who are deployed around the world, why you are qualified to lead the Department of Defense. We already know that you've only led as large as a 200-person organization. We already know that you so badly mangled a budget that after you left, they had to bring in a forensic accountant to figure out what went wrong, and that the largest budget you ever managed was about $18 billion. You know, that is about 51,560 times lower than the Department of Defense budget of $825 billion. $16 million is 51,568 times smaller than the defense budget. Please describe to me, Mr. Hegseth, you talk about DOD passing an audit. Please describe to me a time or an organization when that you led underwent an audit, because you say you're going to hire smarter people than you to run this audit. I'm not asking you to be an accountant. I want you to be able to tell me what kind of guidance will be given to those employees, what will happen whether or not you pass that audit. Have you led an audit of any organization, yes or no? I don't want a long answer, yes or no. Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way my leadership has been stated,
yes or no?
What
are you afraid of? You can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
Yes or
part
no?
of my leadership
Yes
of these
or no?
organizations
Yes
has
or
been
no? Did you lead an audit?
misrepresented
I will
from
take
top
that as
to
a
bottom.
no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit. Nobody expects you to be an accountant, Mr. Hegseth. What we expect is for you to understand the complexity of this Pentagon budget process that is absolutely necessary to outfit our warfighters. Look, the Secretary of Defense is required to make quick decisions every single day with high-level information that's being provided for them. A Secretary of Defense has to have breadth and depth of knowledge. Right now, I am concerned that you have neither. Mr. Hegseth, what is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no. The answer is no. Can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense
signs? You're talking about defense arrangements.
signs?
I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to
Afghanistan.
mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that.
And $825 billion. She doesn't explain the gap. She doesn't have to. That comparison does the work on its own. This isn't a slight upgrade in responsibility. This is an entirely different category of institution. Step 3, the yes or no trap. She asks a question so basic it should take 1 second to answer. Have you ever run an audit? Not conducted a full federal review? Not passed a Pentagon-level inspection? Just have you ever led an audit? Yes or no. He doesn't answer. He pivots. He talks around it. He uses the language of accountability without ever confirming the action. So she asks again. Same words, same tone. No escalation, no frustration, just the same question. And when he circles again, she doesn't raise her voice. She simply closes the loop. I'll take that as a no. 4 words, no drama, just verdict. Step 4, push into the actual role. Now she moves into the real territory. The Secretary of Defense doesn't just manage a budget, they sit across from foreign officials. They negotiate agreements that shape how American military power operates around the world. So she asks, can you name even one of the major international security agreements that role involves? He pauses. He asks her to repeat the question. And that pause matters more than most people realize, because in the room where these agreements actually get negotiated, no one offers a second chance to hear the question. He eventually reaches for NATO, broad, recognizable, not quite what was being asked. Then, after a longer silence, Status of Forces Agreement surfaces. But the sequence tells the story. The answer existed, it just wasn't ready. Step 5, the setup lands. Earlier in the exchange, there was a geography question. How many nations are in ASEAN, and can you name one? He named South Korea, Japan, Australia. None of them are in ASEAN, not one. And she doesn't pile on, she just says it plainly. None of those countries are in ASEAN. That's not a correction, that's a demonstration. Because ASEAN membership isn't classified information, it's not a trick question. It is the floor of regional knowledge expected from anyone operating at this level. Step 6. From facts to weight. The data portion is over. Now she reaches for something heavier. She holds up the soldier's creed, not as a prop, as a lived document. Tammy Duckworth did not read about combat in a briefing. She lost both legs in Iraq. She spent months at Walter Reed, reciting those words to herself as a reason to keep going. When she reads, "I will always place the mission first aloud in that chamber," she isn't lecturing, she is drawing a line. The people who serve, under whoever holds this office, hold themselves to an unbreakable standard every single day. The question she is really asking, without asking it directly, is, why would we accept less from the person giving the orders? Step 7. The conclusion arrives without warning. You are not qualified. No build-up, no dramatic pause before the sentence, just the sentence. And the reason it hits the way it does is because of everything that came before it. She didn't open with that verdict. She earned it, point by point, exchange by exchange. By the time those 4 words arrive, they don't sound like an opinion. They sound like a summary. Step 8. Who's really watching? Both sides of the aisle will frame this differently. Supporters will call it a political performance. Opponents will call it a necessary reckoning. And neither side will change their view. But the actual audience isn't in that room. It's the people watching clips later. The ASEAN moment. I'll take that as a no. Those become the shorthand. That's how a 3-hour hearing gets condensed into the 5 seconds that shape how millions of people understand what happened. Step 9. The question underneath everything. What does this job actually demand? Is it credentials? Is it relationships? Is it instinct under pressure? Or is it something more basic that when you walk into a room to represent the most powerful military apparatus on Earth, you have done the work? You know the landscape. You are not learning the fundamentals in real time, because once the confirmation happens, no one slows down to bring you up to speed. Intelligence doesn't wait. Allies don't wait. Adversaries certainly don't wait. That's the exposure this moment created. Not what was said wrong, what wasn't there to begin with. And here's the part that outlasts the hearing itself. This isn't really about one person. It's about what the process reveals when the pressure is applied. Who approved this nomination? Who looked at the background and called it sufficient? Who decided that this was the right standard for this particular role? Those questions don't disappear after the vote. They attach themselves to outcomes. If something goes wrong later, people don't ask what happened in isolation. They trace it back. They ask who signed off. They ask who saw the warning and moved forward anyway. That's the long shadow of moments like this. Not the confrontation itself, but what it tells us about the machinery that produced it. Because confirmation hearings aren't designed to be comfortable. They're designed to be revealing. A structured simulation of unstructured pressure. A chance to see how someone responds when the room is watching, the questions are pointed, and there is no script to follow. And when that simulation surfaces a gap, a hesitation, a reach for an answer that doesn't come fast enough, the system has a choice to make. Acknowledge the gap, or paper over it. Hold the line or shift it slightly and call it pragmatism. The problem is that lines, once shifted, rarely return to where they were. Each adjustment becomes the new reference point. Each exception quietly becomes the new expectation. The bar doesn't announce when it moves. It just settles somewhere lower, and then that's where it is. That's the slow erosion that moments like this are either stopping or accelerating. One vote, one confirmation, one signal sent outward to allies who are measuring American seriousness and adversaries who are measuring American vulnerability. Leadership at this altitude isn't only about decisions made inside the building. It's about the perception of capability beyond it, and perception, once damaged, doesn't repair quickly. Doubt travels faster than reassurance. A stumble in a hearing room echoes in ways that are impossible to fully track or fully contain. So the line is being tested, in public, on the record. And what happens next is the answer to a question that matters well beyond this particular nomination. When the standard is challenged, does the institution defend it? That answer will be visible, and it will be remembered.